Coming to the last section of our tutorial for input screen, let me quickly show you what happens when you click on add expense or submit report, what happens to the data that is filled here, and then what happens to the receipts or the documents that gets attached to this particular expense. Okay, so let me close the form. Before we go ahead, let me quickly show you 4 tables behind it. The staging tables. This staging table is basically to hold the information when the expense are being filled. And this document, staging document sheet here, is basically to take the path from where the file is being dragged and what is the destination file, how we want to log it. Okay, this is simple Excel tables. Again, the way you want to store the data and then upload these documents will be totally your choice. You can upload it to Google Drive, you can upload it to SharePoint document library, you can upload it to Access database as an attachment. There are so many ways to do it. In this example, I'm just using document library, local document library to do that. So here, once the report is finalized and click on submit report, the data from this particular sheet is being copied here to expense sheet, and then this particular report ID and expense ID is being automatically generated, and then the created time and created by is filled in. This is system username, this is the created time. This created time will always return ET time. I'll walk you through in just a minute. Okay, now I'm gonna load up my form. So now I'm just gonna fill in any dummy data here, for example. So let's say like this, and let's drag dummy expense here. So here is the name of the file that we attached. So once I click on expense, basically this data is being sent to the sheet called staging. So this is the record that we just added. This is what has been filled out till here, and then this is automatically generated. And if you have observed, we drag the file from this folder like this, and then this is the file. So it automatically adds the records the name of the file, and then the path from where is the full path from where it's dragged to, and then this is the automatically constructs the in the final destination how this file name is going to be recorded. Okay, so similarly when you add more items, it's gonna keep on adding down here like this. In the second one, we didn't attach the receipt, right? So the reason why we have this staging staging table is basically so that when the user cancels it, we don't it doesn't hit the expense, the actual tables. So only when it's finalized and hit submit, it copies from here to particular here. And the other reason to bifurcate this expense document and expense again is basically because one transaction here could have more than one receipts. That's the reason why later on we can use these two tables to join them together and then create your reports or pull them up for the approvers to review and so on. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the code, how it actually does this. The code here will be add expense. Add expense will basically add them to staging table. When we click on submit report, it's going to copy the orange table to the blue tables. So add expense. So here the first part, it does the quick validation. This again are all the variables, the sheet, the staging. Again, these two are the worksheets. This is gonna find the last row. This a placeholder, a variable for currency. Very quickly about this validation. So the one the user clicks on add expense without filling up all the information is gonna say, okay, this value is missing, and then it's gonna alert the user. Okay, so it does not add it to the table immediately, and you'll observe that this particular alert goes away after like 10 seconds. So there's a function to do that as well. If you like it, you can implement it for yourself as well. Okay, so going back very quickly, Now this particular input field is associated with the corresponding like caption or label here. So F4, this is r underscore title and then suffix with underscore caption. So this is r underscore title, this caption. So if this particular field is missed out, it's gonna return the caption report title, like of this particular control. Okay, so there's a code that loops through and find out all the controls with the tag called inputs underscore screen one. Okay, so if you select any of these, you'll see this tag has been added to all this. Okay, so the validation codes that run, you can find it in UI controls module. If you scroll down here, this portion basically is defining the control, looping through all the controls within page one controls of the multi-page one within this particular form, user form. Okay, and if the control has a tag input underscore screen one, then it checks if there's a value. If control.value is blank, it's gonna return again, it's construct like the controls, and then this particular whatever is the control at that point of time, suffix it with caption underscore cap, and then it's going to return the caption, okay, of that particular control. So let's say this control is report only, it's going to return report. It will say report is blank, example. Okay, so similarly, if the approver is not selected, it will show approver is missing, and so on. Okay, this gets hidden when it's loaded, when it validates, and then if there is missing value, it's gonna show up this in red, and the message will be sent from the validation. Okay, going back to the code, so here it says alert caption whatever, if it is not blank, it's gonna return the name of the control, and it says okay, this field is blank, please recheck and try again, and then it make that particular label alert like this to visible, and then it triggers like this trigger is basically, it will turn off after 10 seconds. So if you go to this code, you'll say application on time starting from now, and then a time value of 10 seconds, it will run this label off, and this code again here is basically making the visible to false. Okay, that's basically what it's doing. But later on when you're submitting it, let's say that you put a timer to like to stay on for 60 seconds, and then there's another code that runs, then we want to reset this, so you can call this to cancel the timer. So it's very easy to implement, and small things like this can make a difference sometimes. So going back to our code here, KS is basically a variable. It's gonna hold the expense amount from the input screen, and then these are the sheets that we're interested to deal with now, identifying the last row within this particular sheet. So SH is the staging sheet, so here. So at the moment it's going to return us row number 2, that is where the data is going to be filled in. So every time the data is being added, it's going to increment and find the like the last row with which is blank, and then edit the value there. So here the report ID again is basically if you go and check this function, you'll see that it's the name of the user with the time, okay, like mmddyy, hour, minute, and seconds, like that, so that it's always unique. And then the report ID is basically expense ID is also it concatenates the report ID, and then it's if you actually go here very quickly, if you go to miscellaneous, you should find all these small functions. So the report ID is this, right? And expense ID will take in the report ID that was sent, and then it's gonna basically add a counter like with the dash, and then the counter will increase every time the expense is submitted. So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, and so on. Okay. So going back here, within this sheet, it's gonna start adding to the cells whatever is the row that is the last row that is identified up here, and then it's gonna find out whatever is the last row, and then add to column 1 is gonna add the report ID, to column 2 is gonna add expense ID, title, description, and so on. So once you go down here, you'll see that here it's a little bit different. This is because in the approvers we have the full name, and in the second column we have their ID. Again, the ID, because approvers could have the same name, but the ID is going to be always unique. So that's the reason why we're picking the second column from the combo box of approver. Again, these are the dates, margin category, and this is the amount, and then this is the currency, USD or so on. And coming down here, this is for specifically for document. X is a number, and then this is the last row from this particular staging doc. It's saying that if there is any item within this list box, it's going to loop from 0 till, you know, like whatever the number of list items within that particular whatever, you know, like if you have dragged and added more than one receipt to that particular expense, it's going to loop through and find out each and every item. So every time it's looping through, it's gonna identify what's the last row in that particular staging document and keep on adding the data down here like this. Okay, so here is the expense value. Sorry, this is basically the expense ID. Okay, so if we quickly go back to this form, down here you'll see that there's a hidden text box, one for report ID, one for text box. And then the first one is getting us one of them is getting the path, just the name of the file, and then the other one is getting the full path. Okay, and then this is basically again constructing the final file name that you want to upload it to the server. It does not upload in the same file name, so that it always uploads in a unique file name and it does not conflict with the other file names. Okay, so this is going to always be associated with expense ID number, that way it's always unique. Okay, now once it's done, it loads the data starting from row number 2 based on the staging. Again we've gone through this, and then it clears this particular list box where we have dragged the files to. So lastly, now when you click on submit report, again this is a simple code. This code will do the validation once more, and then if there are missing fields, it's going to alert the user to fill that out first, and then it's going to exit, and then it's going to submit this part. So this will be the last code that we'll review now. So if you go here, you'll see like first is identifying the staging sheet here. Let me just clear up this. So it's going to identify the staging sheet, is going to find the last row within this sheet, and then if it is lesser than 2, there's no data, because this is 2. That means if it is lesser than 2, which is 1, this is the header, right? So if there's no data, it's going to exit from their exit function. Otherwise it's going to copy whatever the data is there. It's going to copy all this data and then copy and paste it here. So this part copies from A to M, and then whatever is the last row goes to the expense sheet, find the last row in expense sheet. So after coming here, it's gonna find the last row. So if I just debug this now like this, it's gonna give me 11. So it's saying that it's gonna be pasted to row number 11, and then at the same time it fills the start row variable with whatever was found, which is 11, so that we can fill in this created time and created by, right? So here it finds the last row again after pasting the data. Here it pastes the data, and then it clears the clipboard, and then finds the last row with the data, and basically here is adding the time and then the user. Here this range construction method again is very simple. Cells, starting row, starting column, ending row, ending column. So basically it will identify some range like that to be added. Okay, and then it will identify this range again, starting row and column, ending row and column, and then it constructs the range like this, and then it fills that particular range with this particular value. And then same thing for the document. It goes to the document sheet, finds the last row. If the row is lesser than 2, it exits, goes here and clears the staging, and here it copies the data. If there's a data in this staging document, then it's gonna copy, go to staging document, find the last row with the data, add 1 to it, and then that will become a new row where we're gonna paste the data. There, this is a place where we're pasting the data and then clearing the clipboard, and then copy to server. Again, this copy to server is basically copying the files from here, for example, to the server document library. Okay, so within the project, wherever the project is hosted, you'll find that there is a folder called expense receipt. So this is where it's gonna be uploaded to. So dynamically it's gonna set that up. But let's say that you want to copy to a specific folder. This is the path. This is where you'll take care of that. So currently this is gonna return me the path where the project is located, and then this expense. But let's say that you want to upload this to SharePoint library, you want to upload this somewhere, this is where you'll take care of it. So very quickly, within this sheet, staging document is finding the last row. If the, find the last row is lesser than 2, exit. Otherwise, it goes through from row number 2 till the last row. So let's say that in the staging, it goes through each and every document like this, and then it will copy, this file copy method will copy the file from one folder to another folder. So this is the value it copies. So file index, column number 3, 1, 2, 3, and then it pastes to the destination path. This is the path, and this is the file name. Again, the file name, we already thought the file name is going to be located. Let me add a sample. So the file name is this. So whatever the user uploads and drag to the UI is going to reconstruct the file name, keeping the same extension. So when the submit button is clicked, it's gonna copy it to this particular folder. So I'm gonna clear this out. We'll do a last demo to see how this is working, and then if you have any more questions, then we can talk about that as well. So I'm gonna load up the form, and then we'll quickly do an expense dummy. We'll select any project, the approver, let's see, the merchant is Starbucks, Bills Entertainment USD, let's say $10. We'll add the dummy, let's call this Starbucks. We'll add it here, and I'll add the expense. Now let's say that second time you do, this is again Starbucks, but this time the receipt is different, so let's call this Starbucks 1. I'll drag it here, and expense, so $12. Now we've added 2 expense items to this sample titled expense report, and once I click on submit, okay, now what we are expecting here is we'll see there is 2 documents that we just uploaded, and then this is automatically generated expense ID and report ID. This is the data we filled in till currency, and then the time is automatic, the user is automatic. And if you go to project folder to expense receipts, you'll see 2 documents has been uploaded. Okay, 2 receipts have been uploaded. One last thing to tell you here is for this application, I've set up the universal time to ET time. So let's say that you want your your application to always record transaction in one standard time, so that later on you can know at what time the user around the globe are submitting their expenses. So for that, quickly go there to module called time handlers. Basically here, the only thing you need to know here is, irrespective of the time that your system is currently, you be in New York, Atlanta, India, Brazil, wherever you are, it will always record the expenses in the time of GMT offset -5 hours. Okay, so let's say that you're from India and you always want to save all the transactions irrespective of where the user is submitting from. You can, for India, it's 5 hours 30 minutes away plus of GMT. Okay, so you can set it up in this fashion here, and that code is gonna take care of it. Okay, so that's the last part. I hope I've not forgotten anything. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much what I have for you in this input screen section. In our next video, we'll like talk more about creating dashboard. We'll talk about adding approver section, and then we'll run some reports, and we'll finalize this form, like with close buttons and the user profile and so on. And maybe we can also talk about some of the approaches, how you can install this application to the user, how you want this to be, like to be a plugin, you want this to be a standalone application. So there are different ways. We'll talk about that before we move on to the next section of the UI UX. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send an email to me or comment on the video below so that everyone can discuss. Or if not, then like if you found this video informative, please do not forget to leave a like and a comment. That's gonna mean a lot. So I'll see you guys in our next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.